Good morning, folks. Just woken up, grabbed a coffee. I've actually put the kettle right next to my bed now, which is probably one of the best ideas I've ever had. But anyway, I've got a lot to talk to you about today, and a lot of this information for me comes at night. I think at night is my most main meditation. I get what I call downloads. I wake up in the middle of the night and I literally just start writing and writing. When I wrote my first book, it was just coming to me. I was waking up 3 a.m. every morning with pages and pages of information that I'm just channeling through. Anyway, today's subject is the paradigm of dualism and its devastating effects upon human life. I've written down a lot of this last night. Some of it I'm going to be freeballing as we go along. Hopefully it makes as much sense as possible. The paradigm of dualism is greater than or lesser than, or the God-devil delusion. It's good and bad, angels and demons. That is a complex that we all struggle to realize and know. In truth, all life is equal and there is no good or bad. There's no God or devil. There's no imaginary hierarchy of better than or lesser than. Anything can and does have both good and bad properties. Thus, it's only a subjective point of view that a human has based upon their belief system. In almost all situations, you'll find that there are two opposites, but there are many more options. You could have two choices, but these are both choices of the same coin, both sides of the same coin. Often, the answer can be that both are correct, neither are correct, or you can have two choices, but both lead to the same outcome, or both are two sides of the same coin. Often, the answer can be that neither of these are correct, or both are correct, not just one or the other. This is called the paradigm of dualism, and is a mental trap that we easily fall into without careful thought. Hierarchy is an illusion created by the overthinking mind of us humans, and that can be used to control other humans who believe in it. Sadly, this has been happening to use people as slaves throughout human history, as most humans never realise or get taught in their lifetime that everything can be seen as either good or bad, or both, or neither, and then this gets used to manipulate them into a negative or positive mindset for others' gain. We do not need to choose to imagine ourselves as better than or less than any other form of life, as only negativity ever results from this. It strengthens the ego, which is a false, illusionary sense of self. We are only fearing our own selves. Most humans are aware of the fact our environment, our culture, our parents, our teachers, and the medias we consume over time teach us how to create our characters and behave in this world. As all creatures learn via mimicry, people are taught how to behave by copying others. This is what a meme is. It's something that gets repeated throughout culture. When we teach our children, they always learn by copying the parents. They do not learn by being told, shouted at, or hit. You should never shout at or hit a child, as you are shocking its love, imagination, and creativity out of it. In the past, this sort of behaviour was considered appropriate, especially in my country, in Britain. Parents did not only physically and verbally abuse their children in order to teach them, but so did the teachers. My parents were actually beaten in school with weapons by their so-called teachers. They were so afraid of their teachers because their teachers didn't know how to teach them, because their teachers would actually beat the crap out of them. If we learn via mimicry and learn via memes, then what meme have these teachers and parents taught the child? It is going to remember is the child going to remember the times table, or is it going to feel the suffering of being beaten and realise that this is a very dangerous world and something that it may have to face up to? A loving child cannot defend itself, and thus it becomes a child of anger and hate. Hate is what is needed, not love, in order to defend oneself against violent, abusive attacks of the adults and parents. Children that get shouted at or physically beaten respond by becoming hateful, violent adults. It takes their love away. Even a plant that is hacked at will grow back more and more aggressively, and eventually it will evolve defences such as spikes. This is how evolution works. Even shouting at the child has the most damaging effect. The shock of being screamed at suppresses the child's imagination. This is what Pink Floyd's song Another Brick in the Wall is about. They try to create a clone, a robot, another brick, by destroying the child's ability to express itself, to be different, to suggest ideas outside of the cultural paradigm, ultimately to create a blinded workhorse for their corrupt system. Exactly what they want. It's the only way they know how to perpetuate their own kind and what was done to them. "Oh, it did me no harm. I turned out okay," is the phrase I constantly heard. Actually, yes, it did. It did you a lot of harm. So much harm that your egos blocked you from seeing, and now you are going and spreading this harm like a wave to every other person you possibly can, and it's spreading throughout the culture. Any person that you see as weak or lower than you in your imaginary hierarchy, you use and take out your aggressions upon. This is the absolute worst thing that people can do to children. Children are the weakest of all. Children are looking up to the adults as examples of how to behave in this world. As I told you earlier, they're looking to copy the adults. And so, if we're copying the adults, what are they teaching us? Many parents choose to deny these truths, and denial is precisely what allows the negative traits to be passed on to others and to continue to spread throughout the culture. We never accept and change our own selves, and thus it continues without error correction. This is what has happened historically over and over again. The ego will always choose to blame others rather to make the change to oneself, as this is the easier option, and the ego itself feeds off this and it reinforces itself. No one wants to accept blame, only to blame others, and this allows them to continue to act out the excessive, violent, emotional states that their culture has trained them to believe is acceptable. They tell themselves they are good. They reinforce the ego to themselves. The nature of a culture based on hierarchy is to give people a belief system so that they only blame others instead of change their own self here and now. The truth is, we can only change our own reaction to the situations that arise in life, and this can then be mimicked by our peers, by our children especially, who learn this way, and by the culture that we choose to live in. Attempting to control others or situations or problems by any type of force, manipulation, violence, shouting, hitting, has never been a successful method of creating a solution or bettering our own selves or our culture. It always leads to negativity and violence. It is never wise to hand over your ability to choose what to believe to another person or a group or a culture or cult, even your parents or your teachers. Self-belief is what creates willpower and allows us to grow and create happiness here. We all have our own internal moral compass that we can learn to turn back on. This compass tells all of us right and wrong. It lets us feel the right path if we choose to follow it. If the mind is clouded by stress and insane belief systems and overthinking of thought, then it can be difficult to understand this until one's reached a point of realization, awareness and knowing. But it is possible to feel reality and feel the right way. This does not require thought, it does not require emotion, it does not require ego. In fact, these are all the errors that lead us to cause these problems. People can become afraid of their own form, the body. That's why we laugh when we fart. It reminds us that we are human, we are animals, we are alive. We are all learning to tame our own thoughts and egos. Fear is only fear of the self if you do not truly know the self. Many people go through life never meditating, never quiet enough, never still enough, as they are always addicted to thinking and thus seeking the next moment and the next thing, and they're never silent enough or in a state of mind without enough thought addiction to become silent, to actually come to these realizations and face up to the true self. Many people who have never realized this have so much mental baggage built up that they go into a full mental breakdown if they become alone and silent enough to face up to the true inner self. Some people experience this without choice even. For example, if you have a car crash and nearly die or go into some kind of near-death experience for some medical reason, this will also produce an ego death or a rebirth or an awakening. Awakening is actually a destructive process. It is the complete letting go of the false beliefs that we build up over our lifetimes to form our character or avatar. It is the letting go of all attachment to everything, possessions, money, beliefs, the belief in hierarchy, the belief in the imaginary self or ego identity. This is ego death. It's also something that happens with certain shamanic rituals such as ayahuasca ceremonies, although there are many routes: music, drumming, fasting, meditation. I advocate the meditation route over plant medicines and others, however, because it's the most clearest and the longest lasting change in my opinion. However, we live in a fast-paced world. If people feel that they need to take the plant teacher route and get it done this way, then I'm not against that. Maybe they're at a point of near mental breakdown or at such a point of high desire that they have to take that route, and that is also fine. There is a right way or a path to grow, and we all feel this. We have an internal moral compass that can guide us if we have belief and trust in our own selves, and it is turned on by awareness. There is an element of randomness in life, but that is necessary for us to exist at all. What people define as bad humans are actually all people in a state of egomania. They are at different levels of consciousness and awareness. We are all learning to tame the beast, as it were. The human being is essentially just a hairless ape with some additional brain power after all. In order to truly understand and realize the nature of the demon-angel complex, You should aim to make yourself mentally, not physically, equal to others, all humans, all animals, all life, the planet, all matter, time, space, dimension, the entire universe, multiverse, as one equal thing. There is no hierarchy. You can come to realize this as the answers are already inside us all. This journey is one of acceptance and realization. The path that I took was to start breaking through my fear barriers one by one, and then I had to get completely out of my current situation, because that was causing so many different triggers for me that were dragging me back into my old thought loops. So what I did was I went camping alone in the wild with just minimal supplies of oatmeal and water. This helps you because it's a form of fasting, and it helps reset your pleasure seeking and desire seeking centers. You must not take a phone with you or anything like that that's going to cause you to fall back into these old addictive thought patterns or behaviors. Many people believe it can take years of meditation, but this is not always true. It actually took me 2 weeks of doing this, using these methods, to completely reset myself with meditation, and eventually I experienced a rebirth and reached one consciousness, or the source. It is essentially a complete rebirth, resetting of the mind. It cures anxiety, it cures depression, it teaches you levels of control over the mind and body that you would never even known were possible. You can come to extremely intense realizations. It is an experience so profound that no words can ever describe it. It's something that one has to experience for oneself. It can happen in a second at times for some people, such as Eckhart Tolle or Ram Dass, who I highly recommend listening to their speeches to, as they are some of the most awakened beings that I'm aware of that are public speaking on these subjects. I'll post some links to Eckhart's channel in the description below, because he's so much better explaining this than me. Thanks for listening anyway, and remember, just put out unconditional love into every thought and every action you do, and you can become and see the change that you want in this world.